You hand a crying toddler your phone, and the room goes quiet. That quiet feels like a tool every parent needs. But for roughly 300,000 years, your ancestors raised children to adulthood without a single thing built to be a toy. No blocks, no rattles, no screen, nothing made for a child at all. Their kids still learn to hunt, to share, to belong. So if children grew up whole on sticks, stones, and the open ground, the real question isn't what you'd give a child. It's what you'd quietly be taking away. Think about that for a second. For almost the entire human story, there was no toy aisle. There was no toy box. There was no object in the whole world that an adult had designed, manufactured, and handed over with the words, "Here, this is for you to play with." And yet the children of those worlds did not grow up broken. They grew up capable. By the standards of any modern parent, almost frighteningly capable. So how did it work? What did a child actually do all day, in a world with nothing made for them? To answer that, you have to look at the few places on Earth where that older way of living survived long enough to be studied. Not as a museum, as a living thing. In the 1960s, an anthropologist named Richard Lee went to live among the Jew/Honzai, a group of hunter-gatherers in the Kalahari Desert of southern Africa. Anthropologist just means someone who studies how human beings actually live, by living beside them and watching. What Lee found there reshaped how the world understood early human life. These were not people scraping by on the edge of starvation. They worked a few hours a day to feed themselves, and spent the rest of their time talking, resting, visiting, and raising children in plain sight of everyone. A decade later, another researcher, Melvin Connor, went to study the same people, but he watched the babies. He recorded something that startles most modern parents. A Jew/Honsi infant was almost never put down. It was carried against a caregiver's body for most of the day, nursed on and off whenever it stirred, and kept in near constant skin contact with another human being. There was no crib in a separate room. There was no schedule. There was a body and a child pressed against it, and the steady background noise of an entire camp. That is the first thing to understand. The ancient child did not begin life in isolation, waiting to be entertained. It began life inside a crowd. And that crowd did the work that toys do for you now. The anthropologist Sarah Blaffer-Hrdy gave this a name. She called early humans cooperative breeders. It is a clinical phrase for something warm. It means a child was never the responsibility of just one exhausted parent. It was held, fed, watched, and carried by many hands. Older siblings, grandmothers, aunts, other children. Hrdy argues this is one of the reasons your species survived at all. Human babies are heavy, helpless, and slow to grow, far too demanding for one person alone. So your ancestors did not raise children alone. They never had to. Now picture a man holding an infant, not for a photo, for hours. Among the AKA, a foraging people of the Central African rainforest, a researcher named Barry Hewlett documented fathers who held or stayed within arm's reach of their infants more of the day than fathers in any other society ever measured. The father was not a visitor in the child's world. He was furniture in it, always there, always close. So the ancient child woke up surrounded. And then, as it grew, it was set down. And here is where it gets strange to a modern eye. Because once that child could walk, the adults mostly stopped directing it. The developmental psychologist Peter Gray spent years studying how children learn in hunter-gatherer societies. His conclusion is simple and a little uncomfortable. These children were trusted with enormous freedom. They were allowed to wander, to climb, to handle sharp tools, to play near fire, to take real risks, with very little adult interference. Adults did not organize their play. Adults did not hover. The children were left to figure the world out together. And that word, together, matters more than any toy ever could. Because the ancient child did not play alone, and it did not mostly play with grown-ups. It played in a pack of other children of wildly different ages. A 4-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 10-year-old, all in one roaming little band. The anthropologist David Lancy, who spent a career studying childhood across cultures, points out how rare adult-child play actually is in human history. In most of the world, for most of time, adults did not get down on the floor to play with children. They had work to do. So children played with each other. The older ones taught the younger ones. The younger ones copied the older ones. The whole thing ran itself. So let's reconstruct a single day. You are 5 years old. You wake against the warmth of another person, in the open air, under a shelter of branches. There is no breakfast to wait for, and no one telling you what comes next. The adults drift off to their tasks, and you join the other children. There are no toys, so you make them. You snap a stick, and it becomes a digging tool, the same shape the women use to pull tubers from the ground. You stack stones. You shape wet clay. An older boy is making a tiny bow, copying the men, and you want one too, so you watch his hands and try. You spend the morning hunting beetles and pretending they are antelope. You dig in the dirt for real roots and actually find some, and you eat them, and no one is surprised, because finding your own food is just what a child slowly learns to do. The anthropologist Frank Marlowe, who lived among the Hadza of Tanzania, recorded exactly this. Hadza children forage. Real foraging. From a young age, they gather berries and dig tubers and bring back actual calories for the camp. Their play and their work are not two different things. Playing at digging becomes digging. Playing at hunting becomes hunting. The pretend slides into the real so gradually that no one can say where the line is. This is the part that should stop you, because it inverts everything you have been sold. You have been told that childhood needs to be filled, that a child handed nothing will be bored, and a bored child is a problem, and the solution is more. More toys, more activities, more screens, more structured, adult-managed, carefully optimized stimulation. But for 300,000 years, the opposite was true. The child was handed almost nothing, and out of that nothing, it built everything. It built skills, because it was imitating real adults doing real work. It built independence, because no adult was managing it. It built social intelligence, because it had to negotiate, share, and survive inside a mixed-age band with no referee. It built resilience, because it was allowed to fail at small things while it was small. The flood of toys is not the natural state of childhood. It is the new thing, the strange thing, the experiment your generation is running for the very first time. And some of what got lost in the flood is hard to buy back. Think about boredom. Real, empty, unfilled boredom. The ancient child sat in that emptiness constantly, and out of it came invention, because a bored child with a stick and no instructions has to make something happen. Now the emptiness gets filled the instant it appears. The phone goes into the small hands, and the room goes quiet, and the inventing never starts. Think about the band of other children. The roaming, mixed-age pack that taught itself. For most of human history, it was always there, just outside the shelter. Now a child can go an entire afternoon without it, alone in a room full of objects, every one of them designed, none of them another person. And think about trust. The ancient child was trusted with fire, with blades, with distance, with risk. Your instinct now is to remove every danger, smooth every edge, watch every minute. It comes from love. But the child your ancestors raised grew strong, partly because it was allowed, again and again, to handle something real. Here is the quiet truth underneath all of it. Your child does not actually want the toy. You have seen the proof yourself. You buy the bright, expensive thing, and the child plays with the box. Pulls out a wooden spoon. Drags a stick across the yard for an hour. That is not a glitch. That is 300,000 years speaking through a very small person. The real world, the open-ended object, the thing not designed for them, has always been the better toy. It always will be. So go back to the beginning, to the crying toddler, and the phone, and the room going quiet. That quiet is not free. What went quiet was the noise of a crowded camp, the squabble of a mixed-age pack, the boredom that breeds invention, the slow apprenticeship of watching real hands do real work. Your ancestors raised whole, capable children with none of the things you were told a child needs, because they gave them the only things a child has ever truly needed. Other people, real work to copy, and the open ground to figure it out. You can't hand your child the Kalahari. But the next time the room goes quiet a little too easily, you might ask what filled that silence for 300,000 years and whether the answer was ever something you could buy.